So we want to review the special angle pairs that we learned about in 7th grade because we are going to use those with the types of angles and things that we do in the 8th grade. So we're going to review complementary angles, supplementary angles, and vertical angles. Those are 3 special pairs of angles that you learned about in the 7th grade. And we're going to find missing angle measures in a diagram. So sort of like we did yesterday, they're going to give us a diagram, they're going to give us one angle, and we have to find the other one. Okay, so first off, let's look and review complementary angles. Complementary angles are 2 angles whose sum, that would be the total, the sum is 90 degrees, okay? 2 angles are complementary if their sum is 90 degrees. And if you put them together, they form a right angle. Okay, so typically in a diagram, we're going to want that right angle indicated with a box. They'll put a box in the corner to show that it's a right angle. So this angle and this angle are complementary. Their sum is 90. So if I want to find the missing angle, I would say 90 minus 60, and this angle would have to be 30, right? Because 60 plus 30 is 90, and that is the sum of complementary angles. Next, we want to look at supplementary angles. And supplementary angles are 2 angles whose sum is 180 degrees. Their sum is 180 degrees if they are supplementary. And together they form a straight line. Okay, so we look over here, we see this straight line. So that means this angle and this angle are supplementary. Sometimes I call these windshield wiper angles. That sort of looks like a windshield wiper there. So this is 130. The sum is 180. If it's a straight line, its measure is 180. So we're going to do 180 minus 130, which gives us 50 degrees for that angle. Okay, 130 degrees plus 50 degrees would be 180 degrees, and that is the sum of supplementary angles. Now we're going to review vertical angles. In vertical angles, they are formed by intersecting lines. So if you have 2 lines, let's start that word again. Intersecting lines. They have to have 2 lines that intersect, and vertical angles are across from each other. They're across from each other, and they are congruent. And if you'll recall, congruent means the same size and the same shape. So they have the same measure. They measure the same. Okay, so here you notice I have 2 intersecting lines. This line and this line intersect. And there are actually 2 pair of vertical angles here. There's this angle and this angle. They're across from each other. And this angle and this angle are across from each other. So the ones that are across from each other have the same measure. So since this angle is 70 degrees, this angle is 70 degrees. Okay, so they're across from each other. They are formed by intersecting lines, and they are congruent. They have the same measure. Okay, so let's use what we know to find missing measures. So here we see the corner. You see that L, that corner, and there's a right angle box, which means this is 90. So this angle and this angle are complementary. So that right angle measures 90 degrees. And if this part is 75, I'm going to say 90 minus 75. And 90 minus 75 is 15. So X is 15. Okay. All right, the next one, notice you have a straight line. That's a straight angle, you might also hear it called. We have our windshield wiper angle. So if it's a straight line, these two angles are supplementary. They add up to 180. So if I know one of them, I'm going to take the 180 and I'm going to subtract 15, and that gives me 165 degrees. So X is 165 degrees. Okay. Over here, notice I have two intersecting lines, and these two angles are across from each other. So they are vertical angles, and if they are vertical angles, they are congruent. They are the same measure. So X is 150 degrees because these two angles have to be congruent. Okay, so let's do a few more. This one looks a little complicated, doesn't it? Because we need three angles here, okay? Notice we have intersecting lines, and we know that the angles across from each other are vertical. And if they're vertical angles, they are congruent. They have the same measure. So if this angle is 120, then X is 120 degrees. Okay, now how on earth are we going to find Y and Z? All right, well, we're going to use something else we know. Look at this right here. Do you see the straight line? That's a straight line, and the angles that make up a straight line are supplementary. They add up to 180. So if this one is 120 degrees, I'm going to do 180 minus 120, and Z has to be 60 degrees, right? Because these two have to add up to 180. Well, then I look, Z and Y are across from each other. They are vertical angles, and vertical angles are congruent. So if this is 60 degrees, Y has to be 60 degrees. So if I have two intersecting lines and I know one of the angles, I can find all the others. Two of them are equal, and the two that are side by side that are adjacent to each other, they add up to 180. Okay? All right, let's look at this one in the middle. It's sort of turned funny, but do you see your corner? Do you see the corner? Do you see the right angle box? So that means these two angles are complementary. They add up to 90 degrees. So if one of them's 20, I'm going to say 90 minus 20, and I get X is 70. All right. Now, let's look at this third one. It looks a little different. I see a straight line, okay? So that typically we're looking at a straight angle here, but I have three angles, right? But all three of them, if you notice, all three of them together make that straight line. So that means that this 30 plus this 80 plus the X has to equal 180 because the angles that make up a straight line together, they add up to 180. So we can do a couple of things. We can say 30 plus 80 is 110, and then we're going to take 180 and subtract the 110, and we get 70. So X has to be 70. There's a couple of ways to find that. You may have done it a different way, but as long as you get 70, then you have done it correctly. Okay, you are all ready to do your practice now.